Quick show of hands. Who here likes retrospectives? Well, many developers I know would have kept their hands down right now. They would rather sit at their desk and do something else than be in a retrospective meeting. That's because in many teams and many companies, retrospectives are boring and ineffective. So many retrospectives are boring and ineffective, but that does not mean it has to be like that. If this is your team, change something. Because working on having better retrospectives, trying to improve how you do retrospectives is one of the cheapest things you can do to improve your overall situation. I wrote a book some time ago about agile anti-patterns where I describe problems that happen again and again in different companies when they try to become agile. And many of those problems could be solved by having better, more retrospectives. At least they could be solved by doing that to some extent. By the way, I have added a link to the book in the description of this video. So having better retrospectives is one of the cheapest things you can do to improve your situation. And better or good in this case means the retrospectives must not be boring. The retrospectives must tackle the big systemic problems that this team is facing right now. And the retrospectives should result in real positive change for the team, real change that they can feel. But before I want to talk in more detail about those three solutions, let's have a look at the problem again. Consider the following hypothetical team. They are doing some agile process, like Scrum or whatever. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that they are having retrospectives on a regular basis. Every 2 weeks they have their retro like they should. But their retrospectives are boring and nobody likes them. People would rather work on the next feature or hack on something than sit in this meeting. Also, after the retrospectives, nothing ever really changes. Yes, the team records action items at the end of the retrospectives, but sometimes they do not get done at all. Sometimes they do get done but have no visible effect. And sometimes they do get done and even solve the problem, but it doesn't matter at all because the problem was very small and unimportant. Consider another hypothetical team. They do not do any retrospectives at all. Which of the two teams was more efficient? Which of the two teams was more effective? Team 2, of course. The first team not only wasted the time it took to have the retrospective and to work on the action items, they also had a meeting that demotivated everyone who was there. And after this meeting, those people will surely not go back to their desks and work on happily as if nothing ever happened for the rest of the day. So, does that mean you should stop having retrospectives? No, not at all. But you should work on improving your retrospectives so that the time is not wasted, but that your team can improve their overall situation. So, to get better, you must ensure that your retrospectives are not boring, that they tackle the big systemic problems of your team, and that they result in real positive change. For your retrospectives to not be boring, you will have to keep them short, make sure that everyone is involved and everyone's voice is heard, and also make sure that there is some variety in how you do the retrospectives. So keep the meeting short, but not too short. To have a great retrospective with actionable action items at the end and real positive change, you will probably need somewhere around 90 minutes. Longer than that is too long for a sprint retrospective, but might be interesting for other retros that you might have at the end of a quarter or a year or at the end of a project. Sometimes it might be possible to have a great retrospective in 60 minutes, but shorter than that is definitely too short. I would even argue that 60 minutes is already too short for most of the teams, most of the time. Also, make sure everyone is involved and everyone's voice is heard. So make everyone who is there say something in the first few minutes, otherwise they might say nothing at all for the rest of the meeting. Have a look at the book Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great by Esther Derby and Diana Larsen, and also try out the Retromat by Corinna Baldauf. Both will show you some very short, fun activities that you can do at the beginning to make sure everyone says something at the beginning, and so everyone will be involved for the rest of the meeting. Also, both the book and the Retromat follow a nice structure with 5 distinct phases that you can follow during your retrospective. This will help you to have some structure to your retrospective, but also to have some variety, because there are different activities that you can do during each of the phases, depending on your current situation. And this will help you make your retrospectives more effective and less boring. But even if your retrospectives are not boring, and if everyone is involved, the time will still be wasted when they do not tackle the big problems that the team is facing right now, or when you spend most of the time finding out whom to blame. So, to make sure that you tackle the big problems, remind everyone that we believe that the performance of the team is mostly determined by the system that you work in. Make sure that the retrospective happens in a safe environment, in an environment where everyone who is there can feel safe. And also do not spend time only looking for symptoms, also look for root causes. To remind everyone that we believe that the performance is mostly determined by the system and the culture that we work in, you could, for example, read the Retrospective Prime Directive. It says, regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. But do not only read it, talk about it. Talk about what it means to you, to your team in this retrospective. Also, create an environment where everyone feels safe. Make sure that they know there can be no finger pointing, no laughing, and no shouting in this meeting. Remind people that whatever they say in this meeting, whatever problems they point out, it will not have any negative consequences for them in the future. At one past client, somebody broke those rules. Some very influential team member shouted at the team during a retrospective once. He called them unprofessional, called them names, threatened to get some of them fired. And in this team, all of the following retrospectives after that were a complete waste of time, because nobody would ever talk about the interesting problems again. So make sure nobody breaks those rules and make sure that everyone feels safe. Also, do not look only at symptoms or simple solutions. Dig deeper. It does not help to treat the brain tumor only with aspirin just to make the headache go away. Look for root causes. Look what's really causing your problems, what's really causing the symptoms that you feel. Dig deeper until you find the real problem. So you now have retrospectives that are not boring, where everyone is involved and that try to tackle the big systemic problems. But even if you have these two qualities, they might still be a waste of time if the retrospective does not result in real positive change. Because if there are no visible results to the team, people will still consider it a waste of time, and the rest retrospectives will become boring and shallow again. So you want retrospectives that result in real positive change. So I want you to have less action items at the end, to define success criteria for those action items, and to use your influence to tackle the problems that you see. So less action items at the end. Why do I want you to try that? Because when you have less action items, chances are higher that at least some of them will be done before the next retrospective. Some teams identify 5 problems and then 5 ways to tackle each of them. And at the start of the next retrospective, none of those 25 action items got done. So do less. Identify 1 problem. Decide on 1 or 2 experiments you want to try, 1 or 2 small steps that you can take to solve the problem or to improve your situation. And as long as you are not able to get these 1 or 2 steps, these 1 or 2 experiments done consistently by the start of the next retrospective, do not try to tackle more. And then also define success criteria for those experiments and also say when you want to measure. In 2 or 4 weeks or whenever you want to measure, it is not enough that the experiments were done. You also want to know whether they were successful and what exactly has changed. And in some companies, especially large organizations, most of the interesting problems cannot be solved by the team itself. But you should still tackle those interesting problems. So use your influence, use the influence that you have. Find people who can help you, or people who can help you find people who can help you that can solve your problem. Make your problems visible and make your impediments visible and escalate until you find someone who can help you. And then, when you have retrospectives that are not boring because they are short, because everyone is involved, and because there is some variety to them, when you have retrospectives that tackle the big systemic problems that your team is facing, because people know that the performance is determined mostly by the system, because the retrospective happens in an environment where everyone can feel safe, and because you are not only looking for symptoms and simple solutions, but also for the root causes of your problems. And when you have retrospectives that result in real positive change, because you have less action items, because you define success criteria for each action item and measure success, and because you use your influence to find people who can help you solve your problems. When you have all these 3, then people will start to enjoy retrospectives again. They will participate more, and the whole team will benefit. So, how are the retrospectives in your company working? What could be improved, or what is already working really well? Tell me here in the comments, or shoot me on tweet. I am dtancer on Twitter if you prefer discussing there. Also, if you liked this video, please share it with your friends, followers and colleagues. And subscribe to my channel so you do not miss any future videos.